Okay.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to our weekly webinar for the ASCILITE Mobile Learning Special Interest Group and our Scholarship of Technology Enhanced Learning Research Cluster. So again, this week we have our usual crew of participants, which is fantastic. We have Lisa. Good to see you again, Lisa. And we have Neil all the way from Japan, but actually he's in Parnell this week, visiting us in New Zealand. So it's great to have him here actually in the same time zone. And we were just discussing how it's a little bit different temperature here in New Zealand compared to Japan at the moment. And of course, our guest presenter for this week, Sally Britnell, who's one of our nursing lecturers here at AUT. And Sally's, I guess, really leading the charge of integrating technology into teaching and learning with nursing. And Sally's done some really cool projects over the years. And she's going to talk to us about some of the stuff that she's been doing. And a lot of it does focus on mobile as well. So interested to see what you can share about what you've been doing. Thanks, Sally.
Awesome. So you just want me to introduce myself and keep on going?
Yeah.
Cool. So my name's Sally. I've been teaching nursing for around 8 years now. I've always had an interest in tech and have just finished my PhD, which is actually in computing and maths. I'm waiting for my oral now,
Oh,
which
wow.
is kind of scary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So the oral is going to be hopefully in November. So what I thought I'd do, if that's all right with all of you guys, is first talk a little bit about clinical versus non-clinical degrees and technology and things like that. And then I've got a couple of PowerPoint presentations I've used that have links to slides with VR, AR and things like that in them that I can use as well, just to back things up.
So
does that sound good?
If you just use the screen sharing function, then that should be cool.
I've got 3 screens, that's the problem. Okay, so I'll start a little bit by saying what we did. We started in 2011 and I'm the mainstay in the team here that's been doing a lot of the tech stuff for nursing. The team's changed around me quite significantly. So we first connected looking at mobile learning in about 2011, where our first project was to get our nursing students to actually take iPads and internet connectivity out into the community to look at cardiovascular risk screening, and to be able to do that on the spot. So that was the very first project we did, and then it kind of went from there. We started looking at blended learning and different ways of actually engaging with the students. So I'll go a little bit into the difference between nursing and some other university teaching, because we're regulated by the Nursing Council of New Zealand, and they kind of have a lot of input into the content, not how it's delivered. So sometimes we find ourselves a little bit stuck between what the Nursing Council want and the university want, which is an interesting place to be in. So I've said a little bit about the first project we did. The next thing we went into was looking at how we could actually change our curriculum a little bit. And I'll turn on the screen sharing in just a moment when I find the right button, Tom. It isn't there actually. There's a record, chat, share, there we go.
Yeah, that's the one.
And I will share that screen. Okay, so on the screen to my left, I've got one of the PowerPoints. So this is just what we've done recently. And I'll actually put it in slideshow. And I'll click away to it to show you things as well. And now that's gone to another screen. Are you seeing the screen at the moment, Tom?
Yeah, we're just seeing a blank AUT background screen.
Okay, cool. It's gone onto the other screen. I'll just put it back onto the right screen. Okay. Why don't I just put it on that screen and push play over there? Okay. So this is
we're still seeing a blank screen.
Oh, now it's gone onto the other screen. It's swapping screens when I swap the slideshow across. All right. Okay. We'll try that again. No, it's gone onto the other screen again. I'll just stop sharing, and I will just tell it to share the other screen.
Okay.
When I find Zoom, which has disappeared behind everything. I think what I probably should do is unplug my laptop from the other screens. Now Zoom's disappeared. Apologies for this. Anyway, I'll keep talking while I do it. So there's a number of projects that we're working on at the moment. And some of those have been VR, AR. There's Zoom, I found it, it's on that screen. VR and AR, but some have just been really working with what we've got and what we have, for example, Blackboard. One of the interesting things that we've started doing at the moment is to look at, we want to do a pre-course for one of our master's entry programs. So people can come in with any degree, yet they don't have science. And at the moment, we're trying to figure out the best way to present them that information that's not tied into any of the systems the university uses. So that's where we're at with that at the moment. Excuse me again. I'll try desktop 3 again.
Okay. Yep.
And I will try
We can
putting
see
this.
that so far.
You can see this one? Cool. So, and it's gone onto the other screen again as soon as I hit present. I'll just go through it without hitting present. That would probably be the best.
Yeah, just go manually through the slides. That'd be fine.
Okay, so what we did over the last few years is, I'll just make this a little bit bigger, is challenge what we're doing. And the important part of this, I think, is actually looking at ourselves first. So we looked at ourselves and what we were doing and challenged the status quo. We also found that our numbers were going up quite significantly. So we used to be capped at 130 students, and now we're up at 236 coming in every 6 months, which makes it quite a fast turnaround. So what we did was actually look at scalability, but also look at how and what we're delivering first. So this was the team that I was working in most recently. As I said, the team's changed over the last 8 years, but we actually put ourselves in for the Teaching Excellence Award for a project that we've been doing, and that's completely changing the way we teach to make it more mobile, make it more user-centric, student-centric, and make it more modern, really, for lack of a better word. So the first thing we did was wanting to figure out what the problem with what we were doing was, because we didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and how and what we would change. So it was like exactly this picture showing opening a can of worms, and it really was, because we've got teachers of different experiences and so forth that come in and need to learn new things, and there's a little bit of resistance to change sometimes. There's some quick uptakers, but usually not, as we probably already know. Okay, so the biggest thing that we found, and this, I did a survey in semester 1, 2017 of our students to find out why they weren't coming to class, and this was the biggest thing. And between when I went to university in the 90s, first went to university in the 90s, and now, students seem to have a lot more on their plate. They seem to be family, and everything seems more pressured. And I think, as you guys as educators have probably seen, same as I have, that students are also more anxious and anxious about life, everything, wanting university to be more tailored towards them. So we were looking at what we could do to kind of accommodate that a little bit as much as we could. So you'll see that nothing surprised me on here. The lecture timing, transport, all of those things have always been issues. So the one that did surprise me, and I think it's on the next, I'll just flick over a few slides, was that most of the students thought that passing the paper was the most important thing, not actually becoming a good nurse in the end. And we wanted to change that type of thinking. So it's all about the becoming a good nurse. And we probably all know about the knowing, doing, being cycle. I know Roy Leeton in England does a lot with this, and I was lucky enough to meet him recently as well. But research shows that know, do, and become. So what we figured out was that our philosophy and our teachers actually had a totally different idea of what we needed and what the students needed to what they did. I mean, that's probably not obvious. I mean, it's probably obvious to most people in education. So as a background, this is also what we did. We actually looked at every single learning activity and asked ourselves a series of questions. As I said earlier, we didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I particularly used this process for every single thing that we did, and we designed a curriculum that was student inquiry based. Well, not a curriculum, a paper that was student inquiry based, case based, and used mobile technology. So just to show you, you might be interested in the changes in structure and hours over time. So it was a 30-point paper with 300 hours, and we've significantly changed a lot to online and blended learning practices and student-driven practices. And the students I found have responded actually very well to that. They're pretty more adaptable and more, I'd say, forgiving than we actually give them credit for half the time, I think. So this is one of the ways we've done it, and then I'll get on to showing you what we've actually done. So we have a case study that revolves around 2 clients in the first year, and this is slowly becoming through all of the years. So we wanted to get them acquisition of knowledge, articulation of learning, and being able to apply that is the important thing. So we've mapped out how the case study goes 3 things first. The slide I wanted to put up, because we've done it on a shoestring with only things that we've got, and these are all of the different platforms that we're actually using in it at the moment to actually make this work. And you would actually think that it would be rather expensive, but if you have the time and the inclination to put them all together and wrap the learning around them, but they actually work quite well together. So that's what we're using at the moment. Oops, I'm pushing up, not down.
So what have you replaced Google Plus Communities with, Sally?
At the moment, we're actually trying, we've got several things being tried at the moment. Shane's trying MeWe. I don't like MeWe. I'm trying Teams, and some of the others have gone back to the old discussion forums. To be quite honest, I've changed papers, so I've changed from a first year to a third year paper, and the students do predominantly clinical. So they're not using the discussion board as much as the first years did. But I'm finding Teams does a pretty good job in that you can embed if you put a link into it, it'll embed it like it does in Facebook or Google, where it'll put the picture up and make it a little bit more, I don't know, visual for them. Whereas if you're using MeWe, it doesn't always do that. It seems to sometimes. And
so
if
it kind of parses the content into the
yeah,
post.
it makes it, yeah, it does. It passes the HTML into the post. But I found that useful. It did in a very similar way, which is quite frustrating, as we all know, I'm assuming. That's a really good point, Tom. Thanks for that. And as much as I'm not a Microsoft fan, I've had to start using Teams.
Okay. Sorry, Sally, Lisa here. Just a quick question on those online discussions. What kind of uptake have they had, and are the students contributing? Are they assessed or not assessed? Or
at the moment, no, they're not assessed. In the way we've set up the paper, I'll go back to the first year paper. The way we've set that up is that they have a Mahara portfolio, as you know, Lisa, and they have a WordPress blog. So they do their WordPress blog for the first 6 weeks, and then they summarize that and put it as the first post into their Mahara. It's not actually assessed, but we wanted to get them learning how to reflect first before they actually got to the point where they were actually assessed on it. So we actually key in points where we think it might be a good reflection discussion for them to put into their WordPress blog, which isn't marked, it's for them to do. And the ones who actually do take it up actually do very well later on, I found. So with the Google communities, we never assess them. It was primarily to teach online etiquette and professionalism. For example, not talking about a patient unless it's anonymized and things like that. So we're teaching them the social skills required of a nursing professional, really. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
This time with the third years, there's not as much discussion. It's more about their assignment and their clinical. With the first years, we used to put a lot of legal, ethical debates in and mostly talk about what's happening in the news, health related. Cool bananas? Awesome. Is there anything else you want to hear about on there, how we use them? I can show you a few, and I will later on. The only other unusual way that we're using things, I think, is we're using Google Forms a lot instead of using some of the built-in Blackboard features that we have at AUT. For example, I've set up QR code scanning so that the Blackboard creates a QR code using the Google API and then puts in the student name, the paper that they're in, and a few other bits and pieces, and scans it and puts it into a spreadsheet so that we can have an attendance record. So the teachers will scan the student's QR code directly, which is created from Blackboard, and log them as being present. And we've actually found that that puts a little bit more accountability back on students for their attendance and actually coming, because we've list classes as compulsory and they never show up. So, well, half of them will show up. Excuse me, I'm going to have to cough. Sorry about that. I've been quite sick the last 2 weeks. So we're using Google Forms also for collecting the secret URLs for their portfolios and the links to their WordPress blogs. And these forms are embedded in Blackboard, and the spreadsheet that they write to for the blogs is also embedded into Blackboard so that any student can go in and have a look. It's one of the other unusual things. I'm just looking what else we've got there. The others I'll show you a little bit later. I've got some more things on SeekBeak and bits and pieces like that. So in our design, we also found that we had to cue students into a lot of their learning. So we went and found, and I've actually updated the icons since these ones, but we went and found a set of free icons and keyed them into what they should be thinking about as well, because what we found is that students weren't thinking about what we were thinking they were thinking about. Does that make sense? Just to make you guys smile. So we want to value the time and the energy students put into thinking, articulating their learning, and things like that. So making those a little bit more overt actually have helped quite a bit. So we've got these icons and we just put them through with the activities they go with. Excuse me. So every week.
That kind of just reinforces the conceptual link between the activity and what it's for.
Absolutely, because we found that, I mean, the staff and faculty and so forth value the articulation of learning and the thinking associated with things, but it wasn't visible. We were just assuming that it was happening, so it was making sure that it was visible really more than anything. Yeah. So we do have a virtual environment, and this is getting into the SeekBeak a little bit. Can you see this diagram okay, or should I try and make it bigger?
No, it's okay.
Fine.
Cool. So what we've got is we have a lab, a clinical lab, which is upstairs, and the clinical lab is like the hospital room, and we've made that into the hub. And so our case studies kind of hang off of that hub. And we also have some admin stuff that hangs off the hub. And we have our interprofessional scenario that we've done with Todd from Physio and Stu and Steve from Paramedicine that also hangs off of there, and students can go in and explore. So the link and the QR code are just there on that slide, but I'll go and have a open it up for you.
The International Space Station, Sally, you start with a core and it just kind of grows.
I know, and there's probably going to be more.
A lot more intensive than the last version I saw.
No, I think you only saw the little version.
Oh, okay.
It's always been like this. I just think I might have changed the diagram a bit, but yeah, it does grow. But we've also got the characters of the case study and so forth. So hopefully the internet will allow us to do this. So this is our simulation lab as it is at the moment, and it's actually one of the rooms upstairs. I'd love to get a better picture, 360 picture, but someone else has got the camera at the moment, so I'll have to think about that. So we've got things that they do all the time, like that points to a poster of the 5 minutes of minutes of hand hygiene. We've got the lab rules because no food, no that kind of stuff. We've got a video here, which is one of our students talking about what it's like to be a nursing student, just so that new students can come in here as well. And then if we turn around, I'm sorry if this makes you feel sick. We've got a link to our webpage, some of our teachers and things like that. But on the doors, we've got all of the scenario, other rooms that hang off of it. So if we go into...
Have you done any evaluation of the impact on students' learning of...
Not yet, because we haven't got ethics. We haven't got ethics, that's the problem.
Okay. What about
unless we can...
informal feedback from students?
Informal feedback from students, we've had a lot on the WordPress blogs. We've had less on the 360. I know students are going in there and looking at it because I've had a few questions, particularly about this video over here. But
and
I haven't actually run the numbers.
Records a lot of analytics in the background as well. So this,
to be quite honest, I just haven't looked at it, to be quite honest.
Sure.
It was been my PhD for the last 6 months, not this, I'm afraid. Yes. So what changes we have made though, this is Mrs. Jones's bedroom, and Mrs. Jones is a client who has had a hip replacement very recently and is having trouble wandering around at home. She's due for cataract surgery, and originally I had it so that the students just had to go and explore, but then I found out that they couldn't figure out what to click on. So I actually had to put labels in. I was making them explore for nothing.
Hidden the hotspots originally.
I'd hidden the hotspots because I wanted them to think about things and actually figure out what they wanted to do. But in doing that, they couldn't find them. So what they're asked to do with this one is go in and explore and find out all the health information they can to paint a picture of Mrs. Jones, and then write about that. We've got an accompanying lecture, 20-minute video that talks them through how you might look at a room and how you might look at all the hazards and things like that. So they can click on...
they explore the scenario and then they sort of reflect on that in their blogs.
They reflect on that in their blog. So the other room actually, this one they reflect on what they've found and the information they've found. The other room, they reflect on the hazards in the systematic way that they did find those hazards. So the other thing that I added was that they wanted to know about Sylvester the cat, so we added him. So you can just turn around and basically it paints a picture of someone who doesn't see well, doesn't hear well, is drinking well because they've got a cup of tea, has some surgical centre information, hearing aids and bits and pieces like that. It's actually my spare room. Whoops. Anyway, oops, if we go back, oh, I don't want to go back in there. I want to go back on here. The other one, this is the one that they need to go into and look for hazards and figure out the way that they look around the room and the method that they might use. Because in nursing, we get a lot of information from what we see and what we call initial impressions, and we match the initial impressions to what the patient tells us and what we find, and then triangulate what we actually think. So this is my dad's living room, really. And there are some deliberate hazards in here, like, for example, the cables for the TV, the sofas and things like that. And if they actually look down, the carpet's really holey, and this chair would be really hard for him to get in and out of. But what I want him to do is actually go through it, systematically find the hazards. There's also bills on the table that aren't paid, and I planted those there. Bits and pieces like that, so that the students can actually start thinking about A, what they're looking for, B, linking it to what Mr. Smith's health status and things like that. So that's what we were doing the sneak peek for that one. Any questions so far? Because I know I'm doing a lot of talking, sorry. No? Okay. So that's those two. If we go back round to the interprofessional scenario, which is here, and go into this one, and I'll take you to the beginning of the scenario first. This one's, where are we? Return to the scene. So this is set up between the three departments, and Todd kind of began to drive this, and we've all contributed. But we have a young man down here who's had an accident at hockey and the physios found him on the field. Have you guys seen this before? Has Todd shown it to you?
No.
No?
Not me,
Okay.
but this is interesting.
So there's a young man on the field down here and he's had an injury. So we got together with the physio and the paramedic department to put this together. So you've got his dad over here, and if you click on, yeah, can you hear that?
No.
No, okay. So it's actually Todd talking about his son and giving a bit of family history. If we also click on some things, we can find out more information. And if we click on the ambulance, we can actually go in and have a look. And this was the part that the paramedics.
So one of the key things with this scenario was the handover of information between the various teams. That was the real critical thing.
Yeah. So at the moment in my ear, I've still got Todd talking the handover so that you guys can't hear. So I'm speaking over that and showing you what's going on. So when you go into the ambulance, you can find all the procedures and policies and things like that on concussion, spinal immobilization, and all of that kind of thing. You can also go into the treatments that they'll give and have a look at that and answer questions and get a handover here. So if we click on this handover, this one's written rather than spoken. So they use a lot of acronyms in the ambulance service, like sample and PQRST and things like that to remember. And they've put the information they'd normally get from those. So when they arrive at the hospital, that's us, the nurses part, and we're looking at getting a handover from that. So the handover that we get wasn't actually recorded on here. It's the information that was written back in the ambulance there. But we've got a few things that the nursing students actually have to do. And this was me editing a 360 photo and actually typing that, writing in afterwards. So it's on a little bit of an angle, I'm afraid. But they need to look for all of the hazards, watch the handover from the ambulance staff, and then do these things. And they can submit that on a Google form, which is down here. There's all sorts of resources if they look around. So for example, head injury guidelines from Starship. They can find out his weight for working out any pain relief medications. They can look at hand hygiene. They can click on Dan and he'll tell them how sore he is and that he's really, really sore at the moment and it hurts. And then if we go back around to here, we can click on here and find out his vital signs and click on the charts and look at any of the charts as well. I envisaged, and I haven't implemented this yet, I do have a diagram of it somewhere. I envisage actually using delegation to, through the years of the nursing students, to actually take this further. And it's something that I would like to do, in that the third year does a triage, the second year then goes and does something, and the first year then looks at the vital signs, and they all take a part of it, and it looks at delegation as well as handovers. So that's where I'd like to go with that one next, when I get 5 minutes. And that's, yeah, so that's our 360 environment. It looks more complex in the diagram than perhaps it seems on the screen when you actually look at it. So, yeah. Any questions?
Well, we're kind of rapidly running out of time. So we'll just kind of open up for questions, and if people got a burning question, we probably better move into that before the webinar time's out on us. So
cool. I thought I'd just put up, while you ask questions, the blog, some of the blog posts, which I thought were quite insightful just to have a look at. But yeah, go for the questions.
Oh, I think we're going to run out of time, so I don't have a question, but just to say that's very impressive and really enjoyed listening to you. Thanks very much for sharing that.
Yeah, I've got some more to show if Tom wants me to another day, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe we'll have part 2, Sally, because you've done a lot. And in fact, I mean, there's basically an entire PhD in that, which has just been a side project for you.
Pretty much.
Besides your real PhD. So.
Well, my real PhD was designing an app. So.
Yeah. So you've done some really cool stuff, which is great. And
I'd love to actually write some of it up, Tom, if you could give me a hand with that. But the problem is we haven't had ethics. Vikal was helping us with that, and he's now left. So.
Yeah, well, I guess that depends on what you're writing up. So, I mean, the design, the development, is different to actual student.
Yeah, I realise. Yeah.
So there's different angles that you can take on it.
So we can't actually use any of the statistics because it was an informal survey.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, well, I think probably going to have to stop the recording there because we're pretty much at time. But thank you very much, Sally. And I think what we'll do is we'll have a part 2 at some stage.